Right, so here we are at the lake. I wanted to talk about getting correct exposure. There's a couple of things here. Firstly, the immediate landscape is fairly dark, and the sky behind it is giving us a backlit situation. Kind of presents a bit of a challenge with exposure. I've taken quite a few shots here with the birds coming in, landing on the water, only to discover that I've lost quite a few photos from blown highlights. I think the best way to explain this is to show you a couple of photos that I wasn't able to recover. I'm using Luminar AI, however the concept would be much the same in any other post-processing application like Lightroom or Capture One, for example. Now if we zoom in, notice how the detail is missing around the forehead here of the pelican and down along the top of his beak, and also over here on the top of the wing and on this section. Essentially, what I've done here is incorrectly exposed, and I've burnt out these highlights, and we're not able to recover the detail. If I go into light, it's very difficult to recover these highlights. I think this might have been the same series of shots. Yeah, we can see here. There's just no detail in these areas here. All right, so if we have a look at another photo that I've saved, if we have a look at the white section here of the wing, see how there's detail? So the exposure is okay with this photo. Overall, I've been able to save the highlights with this one. And then we get photos like this where the subject's really dark and we've got this bright background, but you can see that the highlights have been preserved here. And if we go into the edit, you can see that I've lifted the shadows, and that's pretty much about it. I've just dropped the contrast slightly, quite like the photo. So I mean, yeah, here we have a backlit situation and a dark subject, and that's the challenge. So we want to expose for the highlight, and then we can generally recover the shadows. So yeah, I mean, that more or less covers it. Okay, so here we are at the lake again. What I want to do now is explain what I'm doing to compensate, or how I'm preserving my highlights in the camera settings. I'm using a Canon, but the principle is pretty much the same for any other camera. Okay, so this is what I'm doing. Right, so I want my shutter speed to be set at 1/3200. The aperture I'm setting at f2.8. I want quite a shallow depth of field. That's going to let a lot of light in. So the ISO at the moment is set to auto. So I'm just going to take a photo. That's it. So if we just go into that photo, notice the blinkies. So auto ISO is not going to do me justice in this situation here. We can see on the histogram how the highlights are clipped here. All right, so what we need to do is we need to set the exposure so that we clear this right-hand edge of the histogram. Now, if you understand how the histogram works, basically we have this dynamic range between black and white here. And if the white, or either color, exceeds the capability of the camera as far as the dynamic range, the camera just clips, in this case, it clips the highlights. So whatever extends beyond here just gets clipped at that point, all right? And then we lose detail. Now, we can't recover burnt highlights, but we can recover, to a degree, the shadows. So what I want to do in this case is expose for the highlights. So we want to protect the highlights. So I'm going to go in and have a look at that photo again. I had that set on auto ISO. See how the ISO is set at 250? I'm going to go into full manual mode now. Take it off auto ISO. So we go over to the ISO setting here. Okay, so what I'm going to do here, I'm going to try ISO 200. Just zoom in a little bit, see if we can see that. There you go. I'll take another photo. All right, so we're not getting any blinkies with an ISO of 200. I'll bump it up another notch. Go to 250. Okay, at ISO 250, we have our blinkies. All right, so that's telling me that that part of the frame is overexposed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to back it off, and I should have the correct exposure. I'm happy with that. So we're going to go with 200. So we're not getting any blinkies, but the main thing is to look at the histogram and notice that these highlights here are off the right hand edge of the histogram. So they're not touching that edge. So now I've set up my camera in manual mode, 1/3200 of a second, f2.8, ISO 200. And if a bird comes in to land, I should be good to go. Just zoom out here on my phone. Yeah. All right, dark foreground here, bird comes in, and you know, I've done everything I can here to protect my highlights pretty much. So we should get a couple of decent shots. So I thought I'd wrap up the video with a couple of my favorite shots from the day. The thing that I want to mention before I close is to invite you to subscribe to the channel and follow my journey. I'm going to be uploading regular videos from now on. It's a fairly new channel, and yeah, I mean, at the early stages of building it. So here's an invite for you to join me on my journey. Might go for a wander up the back and get the heart pumping and see what's up there.